Recording.
What's up?
This is Scott Loveridge with the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development. It's our pleasure to host today's webinar on business retention and expansion, an essential part of economic development. And this is presented by Michael Darger, who's at the University of Minnesota, an extension, and also president of the NACDEP, the National Association of Community Extension Development Professionals, Community Development Professionals. So with that, Michael, I'll hand it over to you and look forward to your talk.
Great, thanks, Scott. And we tested all this technology on Friday, and hopefully it's working today. But I'm sure if people can't hear, they'll chat in. And I'll welcome everyone, and I thank the North Central Center for this opportunity. Extension in Minnesota is approaching the 25th anniversary of doing business retention and expansion as a what I'll call a legacy extension program. So I'm pleased to share a little bit about what's up these days. And this webinar will explore four things pretty briefly. Why BR&E matters, overview our Minnesota business retention and expansion model, talk about a couple of recent innovations in the program, and describe the BR&E takeout items, going with the theme of this North Central webinar series of items that you can take out across the North Central region. So Rosa is going to bring in some audience polls here. Just like to get a sense of who's in the room. I recognize some of the names. And first of all, if you want to just tell us if you're from Minnesota or another North Central state or elsewhere. And if you're from an international location, I'd invite you to chat that into the chat box. Just always interesting to see who's with us. And yes, the next one is, what's your role at a university or otherwise? And the final one is, do you have any business retention and expansion experience? And when those polls are closed, yeah, if you can share those, Rosa. Okay, so experience-wise, we have about 60-40 people have done BR&E, some experience in the room. And we're getting a mix of mostly folks from North Central, of some Minnesotans and some from elsewhere. So, and finally, a good mix of educators, more educators, and then university faculty or other folks. So it's a nice mixed group, and thanks, everybody. So why do business retention and expansion? And since more of you than not have some experience, I'll go through this pretty quickly. But jobs, other impacts of local business, providing data about your local economy or an early warning system, and kind of an asset-based approach are four kind of major reasons, and I'll quickly go through those. First, jobs, and this is really the most obvious, by far the most obvious reason. Just using some Minnesota data from 2012, we found that 29,000 jobs were created from either of the major strategies of business recruitment, from businesses outside of Minnesota, or from businesses newly created in Minnesota. So 29,000 jobs from those two major economic development strategies. But if you take the BR&E, working with existing businesses of over a year old that were Minnesota firms, over 123,000 jobs, which is a factor of 4 times as many jobs from existing business as from new business, either recruited or newly created. And this squares with the research, which shows anywhere from 40 to 86% in economic development literature of new jobs come from existing businesses in a community or a region. And BR&E, if you can regard it as an intentional effort to reach out to businesses and improve your business climate by doing 1, active listening, and 2, indicating or showing to these businesses that you care about them and the fact that they're in your community. So here is I don't know if I get the clicker right. There we go. Elizabeth Abraham is a Minnesota business owner and manufacturer in the northern suburbs of Minneapolis. And we have we have her and some other folks on some of our BR&E videos, and you'll see her at conferences. But she gives credit to that suburb's BR&E efforts for helping her decide to stay put and resist offers from other jurisdictions to move there. So if you don't welcome, if you don't thank your businesses and show them that you care about them, then who might take advantage of that? And this would be one example. I don't know if we had any Wisconsin folks. Well, Josh, you're still in Wisconsin. So, anyways, this is Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker and one of his cabinet and one of his state leaders with him, and they're happy to recruit businesses from Minnesota or elsewhere. And so, I mean, we all know this this business recruitment is happening out there. So, curious, how much business recruitment do you see in your area where you are now? And feel free to chat in comments or questions along the way. By the way, this presentation will take about 25 minutes, and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A or discussion. So another aspect about BR&E. So this is a nice looking business in southern Minnesota, and a real business in a real community, except that it went out of business. And so, you know, this is something that we went to the League of Minnesota Cities conference this past year, and we asked about 100 city officials in the room how many times did they have an unexpected business closing or workforce reduction in their city. And since this is kind of a mixed crowd, I didn't make this into a poll for you all, but this is what we found out from the Minnesota officials. Now, if you look at that, item B, 3 to 5 times unexpected business closings or workforce reductions in the last year, 26% said 3 to 5, and over 5 times did it occur for 35% of this group of city officials. But maybe the most interesting thing to me, because the business, the Great Recession happened in this time frame, so we know a lot of business closings and workforce reductions happened very acutely. We know that, but over a quarter of these city officials really had no idea how many business or workforce reductions had happened. So that's an opportunity for improvement in terms of their kind of competitive or reconnaissance about their local economy, what's happening with the local businesses in their community. So if you do business retention programming where you go out and visit with businesses and capture this information, it gives the community an opportunity to provide businesses with knowledge or a connection to resources that could assist them in staying competitive or becoming competitive, and also adjusting policies in the community that unnecessarily hinder or even diminish business growth. Now, turning to our Minnesota business retention and expansion model, that is the model that U of M Extension teaches and promulgates. We've been around since 1990, and that was Dr. George Morris, who's an emeritus professor here and other universities. But he and Scott Loveridge, the same Scott Loveridge here, produced some educational materials in the 1990s that guide community folks on business retention programming, and we still largely use that model. So the model that we have is, I would call it kind of a traditional campus field partnership, where the BR&E consulting or facilitation of the communities is done by extension educators in the field, and then there's a campus specialist, myself, who assists with applied research. So we integrate community development principles, and these principles would include making the BR&E is very much owned by the community. They make the decisions, they implement the results, they do the research, and we emphasize including more than the usual suspects on their broad-based group, their task force of actors who work toward the community BR&E, and their strategic planning built in. And I would say kind of a learn by doing or do by learning aspect to this. The community is going out and creating their own primary data, and then they're deciding what to do and moving forward. So just a couple points. Our educators in Minnesota, many of you may know this, but they're deployed kind of on a regional basis in the community economics program area. We have 9 service areas, and 8 in greater Minnesota and 1 in the Twin Cities. And then here is the gang, and you may have met some of these folks at NACDEP or Community Development Society, or this work. Some of them have done work amongst the North Central states, but I'm regarded as an extension educator for the purpose of helping to cover the Twin Cities, although really no one person can cover the Twin Cities metropolitan area. But this team does BR&E and other community economics programming across Minnesota, and there are BR&E experts that serve communities across the state. So here is the program model, and this encapsulates the whole process, which could be anywhere from a 2-year to a multi-year process. But let's see, is that green arrow, if I use this thing, there it is, the nifty little green arrow. So the research step 1 is all about the community gearing up, a team, a leadership team, a task force, developing a survey and moving out and visiting businesses, capturing the primary data. Then step 2, prioritize, is all about them sifting through the data with assistance from Extension or on their own and making some decisions. And we issued a couple reports in that process to help them. And then finally, most importantly, is the implement step 3. And we have that kind of, it's an upward journey over time, because it's really kind of takes the most energy in the organization to get to that implement step, but that's really the most important thing. So this is an evolution of the program model that I talked about earlier, that George and Scott developed along with many others. And we have some videos on our website that kind of show how it works, depending on your attention span or how much time you have. They're anywhere from 2 minutes to 18 minutes. So showing, for instance, that business owner that I showed you earlier. So it really, again, it's a when Extension's involved with the community, it's a partnership, and the educator will be involved here in research step 1 a lot, and then to some degree in the prioritize step, and then a lot, or I should say a moderate amount, in implement step 3. The campus BR&E specialist really concentrates the most here on the prioritize step 2, helping the community sift through the data and make some decisions and move into action. So our website is, I could chat this in, we got a shortcut version. I'll put it into the chat, and it'll be later on at the end, but let's see if I can get that into the chat. So the videos are right on our homepage, right over here where it says videos. Easy for me to find, but if someone hasn't seen it. So that's where the videos are, and we're hoping there's some videos that kind of talk about the overall process, but we're planning on putting more educational videos there by January. So as far as the applied research and the BR&E analysis and reports, here's just some report covers from 3 of our most recent communities that we've worked with in Minnesota. And the campus, the BR&E specialist, produces these particular reports were produced by Bridget Tuck, and now in the near future I'm going to be doing the reports. But we issue kind of a big report, and I'll put the arrow by the name. The research report is a thick report, so it's a binder full of all sorts of information. But the heart of the report is what I call Chapter 3, and that's all about the community's survey results. And then later on, after the community gets through some decision making and chooses some priority projects, we give them a summary, kind of a streamlined report that they can put on their website or share at meetings. And so it's kind of a tag team of reports as they winnow through the results and decide to move into prioritized action. So I said the
Talk
chapter.
About sponsors.
Sponsors, sure. Scott asked about the sponsors, and So, and if you can see the Monticello report on your screen, they had a gob of sponsors from telecom companies, the city, a couple regional. There's a regional foundation, several banks. Cargill has a plant there in town. That's the largest privately held company in the world. They're headquartered in Minnesota, so one of their plants is in town. Xcel Energy is the big investor-owned utility company. So they had a lot of sponsors. But when you go over to Forest Lake, it was just the city and 2 electric utilities. So it really varies, wherever they can get funding. But we've got some partners. So you see Conexus Energy on 2 of these reports, and they sponsor 1 BR&E a year. And we do have a program fee here, which is for these communities. I think they each paid somewhere between 12 and 15,000. We've lowered our fees a little bit, but these communities all paid that rate, and the first money on the table was electric utilities, and oftentimes foundations and banks would come in after those types of sponsors. So the heart of the research report is chapter 3, and that just is all about the data that the survey came up with. So here's just an illustration of how this works. It's the key part of the research report because it's the data that they create, and we feed it back to them. We analyze it, and with the help of some folks on campus and some economic development experts from the industry, we have a process for coming up with some ideas. And so this is an example from Big Lake, Minnesota from 2007. And this was just a set of ideas related to the strategy of improving firms' profitability through technical and development assistance. So that's the name of the strategy right there. And the program, the overall extension program, is called BR&E Strategies. So that's the name. We actually have strategies that we develop individual strategies for each community that works with us. And so these are, below that are a series of project ideas that we came into the community. These are just the titles of the project ideas. There was actually a narrative of 1 to 3 paragraphs for each of these ideas. And so we call it a potential project. It's not a recommendation. We don't use that word in our lexicon because, again, it's all about the community making decisions, and the university, we own this process and we help them with this process, but we're not there to tell them what to do. We're just suggesting some things that might make sense. So anywhere from forming a business roundtable, project 6, down to expanding their markets for local businesses by promoting a regional outlook. And in fact, the town of Big Lake chose, as one of the 4 projects they decided to do, they chose this form of business roundtable, and that ended up in their summary report. So that's why it's in italics, just to show you that they actually picked something off of this list. They also made up some ideas that they adopted later on. So that's just an example of how we help the community move and prioritize and make some decisions and move into action. So now I want to quickly cover a couple of innovations that we're using in the program, one of which probably many of you have heard about before. There was a session on this webinar series. Was it last year, Scott, or the year before, that Scott Loveridge, I'm sorry, Scott Chasden from the University of Minnesota talked about ripple effect mapping. So that should be in the archives of the
we've had a couple
North
actually.
Central webinars.
Mary Emery and some others did one.
All right, so there's a lot of material out there. So I applied this technique to business retention and expansion. And this is an example of a finished ripple effect map that we used for BR&E evaluation in the town of Hugo. And I doubt you can really see any of the details there. It's it's this big thing, and it doesn't really it's not really amenable to putting it into a PowerPoint over the webinar. But this is a BR&E happened in Hugo in 2011, and this is what they had seen happen as of about 21 months later in early 2012. So now I'm just going to show you a partial, like a drill down. We use the software Xmind, and they allow you to drill down. So I don't know if you can see this any better, but it's the project that they adopted from their business retention program was to address their Minnesota Highway 61 access issues and improve the frontage in downtown Hugo, which is a small northern suburb of St. Paul. So as of February 2012, The project leaders who came to the Ripple Effect Map session reported several accomplishments that directly stem from this priority project. And so they were pleased. The nice thing that they got a takeaway, which is a ripple effect map where they could use, in their community to be proud of their accomplishments and to think about what else they could do. And then we at Extension got an evaluation document that helped feed the folks inside of our institution who need to know that your program produces results. So I regard it kind of as a win-win, and less of a black box where the evaluation data goes in and the community's not sure what comes back for them. So I have a pending Journal of Extension article that was accepted on this. That will be coming out sometime in the next year. And then the next innovation would be something that's not new under the sun. That would be focus groups. But we haven't been able to find anything in the literature yet. And what we had was a little very small suburb north of Minneapolis. It's really almost an exurb. And they, the BR&E strategies program is predicated on using volunteers. So this little town said, well, we can't get that many volunteers, so we're not sure we can use your approach. But the city manager and the city planner didn't want to let go of this opportunity to do this project because that electric utility company was willing to pay part of the program fee, and they knew it was a good opportunity. So we talked with them when we came up with the concept of using focus groups to just bring instead of going out and visiting the businesses at their place of business with 2 volunteers with the traditional approach, they're coming to the focus group sessions at the city hall, and we've had 4 focus groups now this fall, and we're just starting to tabulate the results and use en vivo and do qualitative analysis and all that. But they're planning on having a plan created by April that they'll take back to the community. So we think that this technique may be helpful for certain communities, but we also know that there's certain costs to doing focus groups that make it not appropriate for lots of situations. In particular, I get to use a graduate student for the first time, and I'm finding that's rather nice. So I'm hoping to get another grad student. And we're hoping to present about this if we get accepted for the NACDEP conference, which is in Grand Rapids next June in Michigan. So let's get to the takeout part of the session. First of all, our program in Minnesota is composed of 3 what we call program offerings, things that we offer to the public. One is the BR&E Strategies program, which is what I've really been talking about until now, and that is only available to Minnesota communities. However, we have 2 other program offerings, and one is this class about this whole process, and that's the BR&E course, and it's what we call a blended course. So it's composed of both face-to-face and online portions. So the face-to-face will be happening January 21st and 22nd in St. Paul, Minnesota, and then there'll be 6 weeks of online learning. And we actually had several non-Minnesotans join us this last year in the course. So we used to have 2 face-to-face, like bookends on the front and the end, the beginning and the end of the course, but we dropped the face-to-face on the back end of the course, and so a person would only have to come to Minnesota once, and the rest is online. We did previously have both an strictly online class a few years ago, and we also had a strictly face-to-face. But we've really amalgamated, taken the best parts of each of those, and come up with what we think is a superior way to teach this using a hybrid or a blended approach. So actually, when the people took the first offering, we hadn't offered the course for several years, but when we did offer the course this past year, about a year ago, we found that several people said, I want more live chat. And even more people said, I would like more face-to-face. But even more of the participants said that was just right. So we kind of get the sense that even though it's not perfect, it's pretty good balance of face-to-face and online learning. So that's a takeout item that folks, and we had some Wisconsin Extension people and person from the University of New Hampshire Extension participate, along with lots of Minnesotans. So some of the results of the 2013 offering was that there's a city in the metropolitan area and a outstate city doing major BR&E initiatives using what they learned in the class. And then up on the Iron Range, which is northeastern Minnesota, there was a small business development center professional who took the class, and she's collaborating with John Bennett, who's our educator in the Northeast, the Arrowhead area of Minnesota. And we just met with the state agency, which is the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation Board last week. And they're looking at supporting BR&Es with communities, or maybe a few communities working together in that part of the state where we haven't traditionally done BR&E. That's the U of M Duluth, which is a coordinate campus, and they have their own kind of economic development enterprise as part of that campus. So Extension hasn't really done many of its community economics programs. So the class allowed us to kind of build some partnerships and to be imaginative about how we could work together. And then finally, Andre Guerin is I think he's been on the job for just over a year, working with Charlie French out at University of New Hampshire. He came out to the class, and he decided New Hampshire's is launching a statewide BR&E initiative based on the Minnesota model out in New Hampshire, and we've been staying in touch, and that's pretty exciting. I know that New Hampshire had BR&E going years ago, and I met the professionals. They were not Extension. I don't think they were university people. It was a state agency driven, but I think that kind of died with some retirements or budget cuts years ago. So that's just what we've heard so far, and we're thinking that this class has some good things to offer people both in Minnesota and outside. Now, the third thing was we do have some what we call BR&E tools, which are just online items like the videos, but there's also an Extension question, BR&E question data bank on our website, and there's other things. So we want to build that up over time, and that's something that's available for people too. But we don't necessarily know about it unless we're really all over our web metrics. So I think that's it. I think I got through everything, and I think I went a few minutes over what you suggested, Scott, but if there's any questions, comments. I don't see anything in the chat box yet.
Well, thanks, Michael. It usually takes people a couple minutes to get their questions going. One is, how do they get involved with the training program in January?
Right. So if they go to that website, bre.umn.edu, there'll be a section at the bottom. There's several sections, and one says BR&E course. If they go in there, they'll find a syllabus and they'll find an info sheet, but there'll also be a registration link. So we had 3 people from Wisconsin Extension come over. One was a state specialist and 2 were county-based educators, and that was kind of fun. And then, like I said, Andre came over from New Hampshire, and so we're gonna make it easier for people. We're not gonna make people fly out or drive out twice. Actually, what we did on that last session of the class last year, it was supposed to be face-to-face, but about 10 of the people came in via the live chat, and about 9 people were there live, face-to-face, and so that was really interesting. So we're just going to go with it all online for that last session. I think it's going to work great.
Great. If you're planning to start a program like this in your state, how much time would it take to do the analysis and report write-up that you do for the Minnesota communities?
Well, going back to the research that you and George did, Scott, the average that you put into that book that talked, there's not very much in there about the research part. The who writes the reports. It basically recommends going to a university researcher in your area and getting someone to help you with that. But the way we do it, with the 2 reports and the tabulation and everything, I figured the applied research part for us is somewhere in the 100-hour 100-hour piece, and that's above and beyond what we call the BR&E consultant. The BR&E consultant is either the extension educator or someone else who takes the course and implements the program in the field. And that can be, there's a series of time commitments there, as you know.
Bridget had a question on managing the volunteers.
I can't. Am I supposed to be able to see that? Because I can't see any chat coming on my screen. Oh, wait, I got the host up. Let's see. I got to put up the participant. I was doing chat with Rosa, and I can't find the one that shows all of the
Just click
participants.
everyone at the bottom.
Click
On the
everyone.
bottom, Michael.
Oh, everyone as a tab. Thank you. There's Bridget. Hello, Bridget. Yeah, who manages the volunteers under the strategies program? So, that's that is a that's really a leadership team issue, and there's a leadership team that's built into the process where you could just have one person or you could have several people, and there's the methodology calls for 4 or 5 leaders, and we talk about that in the class. But one way or the other, you have to have someone managing the volunteers. We'd like to have it distributed over more than one person, because what happens if this person, something happens to him or her? So we like to have it spread out, and also sometimes things happen, so a lot of people are doing this as a volunteer, but you of course do want some professionals involved on the ground helping make the BR&E happen. So it could be done with all volunteers, even on the leadership team, but usually you have economic development professional or a city planner, city community development director, or county counterpart, or someone who's kind of helping, who's doing this as a big part of their job and bringing in lots of volunteers. On that focus group thing, as I said, the volunteer, there was a doubt that they could get those kind of volunteers. So in that case, the city administrator is doing a lot of work, city planner is doing a fair amount of work, myself and the grad student, and then there's a broader task force. So we'll see how it's going to be interesting to see what level of uptake there is as they define projects and roll them out in terms of implementation. Because when we do the traditional BR&E, where people go out and they do visits of businesses, they get motivated. They kind of take some personal ownership over the results, because they actually went out and listened to the problems, the pain, the whatever from the business owners, and people get more personally invested in seeing some results. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when you take that to more of a focus group approach. Any other questions? And hello to everyone I know out there. I recognize several of the names.
Yeah. If someone's a complete newbie, how long would it take them to get up to speed to manage the community end of it, assuming they can find somebody to contract for the 100-hour analysis piece?
If they're a complete newbie, how long would it take them to get up to speed, or just how long would it take them to implement a project?
Get up to speed and implement.
Okay. Well, it happens all the time, but I would say that to get a project organized, you can't do it by yourself, the way the model's built. So it really comes down to convincing a handful of people in the community that this is worthwhile. And the videos do a great job of showing people, real world people in Minnesota, who at least someone on that video is going to be somewhat like a person who watches the video. And so once you get a team, then you can put a project together in a few months. But if it takes longer to get some key allies together, it might take 6 months to a year. So there's a community readiness factor in terms of whether people, how excited they are about this. Maybe if there's a sense of crisis in the community about there's been some workforce reductions, or there's been some key businesses that have closed or moved away, or are at risk of doing that, then people might be a little bit more motivated. But so we did a workshop exposing people to what business retention and expansion strategy is about. We did one in November, and the mayor of one town and the economic development professional from the other town got excited about it. They put together a joint economic development authority, their 2 ED commissions, together for a meeting, and they met about 3 weeks ago. And so they're shooting for trying to get something going in the early winter. And I would say that's, if people are pretty motivated, you can get something going in a few months. But if you're don't have as much time or aren't as motivated, it might take might take a year or two to get one of these things off the ground. It really varies, but it does take a lot of work. Involves a lot of people, 25 to 50 people, according to the volunteer model, and that's why we're interested in trying this focus group technique, and also having BR&E tools on the website, so that if people want to do something on their own, or they want to just do a smaller scale version, or they want to use more of a qualitative approach where they use some research professionals, we want to have some different kind of tricks. But if the full strategies approach with all the volunteers and stuff, when it works, it's just kind of amazing. It's just like any community initiative where you get a small army of volunteers excited about something and doing it. But that doesn't happen every day. So
How about the person months of the person coordinating? So you talked about kind of the calendar side of time, but not necessarily the amount of effort that individual. There'll be obviously times when they're doing a lot, and other times when they're waiting for things to happen.
Right. So in terms of person months, like a volunteer visitor, visitation coordinator, who's in charge of lining up all the visits with, typically 30 to 60 or as many as 80, 90 businesses visited. That person would be really busy in terms of identifying the businesses with whoever's helping them do that, lining up all the, everything from survey documents and matching up teams to visit, blah, blah, blah. That person could have, what's a person month? A person month is 160 hours. That person could have a quarter to a half a person month in, kind of launching the thing, and then as the visits are taking place, it's a lesser amount because they're back tapping, nudging, kind of checking in with people through email, text, passenger pigeon, whatever it takes to kind of keep nudging people to keep at it until they achieve the goal. Then the overall coordinator might just be kind of convening meetings, so they might have more of a steady person month, time requirement. And then other people may be more on the back end. So there's a role for red flag or warning flag coordination, and that would be once the surveys start coming in, what are some opportunities to make direct responses to what that business said? As they're something about the fire hydrant down the street from them that's a problem, or to something much bigger, like if we don't get this workforce problem solved over time, we're not sure we could do the plant expansion here rather than the state next, the next state over that's been offering us all this great stuff. So that's an opportunity to respond over time with the right resources, and that's where you're going to be bringing in the economic development professional or people she or he knows from the public sector who can assist on those things. So it does vary, like you say, Scott. And then when you go back into that step 3 of the process, that's where things really space out. This implement step, it's the least prescriptive, kind of more based on wherever they decide to go. We like to suggest that they keep meeting. They keep this task force meeting, quarterly, so that things can continue to be assessed and celebrated or adjusted as needed. So you can keep rolling forward in time and get some results from all the hard work that happened in step 1 and step 2.
Well, thanks, Michael, for a very good overview of the program and making these opportunities available to folks. I'm not seeing a lot of questions from the chat box.
No.
Maybe you just did an outstanding job of explaining everything. I don't know.